Welcome to Sports Overtime. I'm Gerhard Mathagani, joined by WKRG Sports Director Simone Eli. A packed show tonight. Of course, Simone, though, we got to start at the top. The biggest news of the entire week, Alabama High School Athletic Association Executive Director Alvin Briggs announcing that he will retire. You were in the building there in the state capitol in Montgomery. Your thoughts overall? Yeah,
to be honest, Gerhard, this was the first time I had ever attended a Central Board of Control meeting, and I went up there not knowing that this was going to be on the docket, and it wasn't on the agenda at all, actually. In fact, I think that I was one of several people in the room that were surprised to hear this news because it was not on the agenda. It was not something that was really publicized. And the only people that were in the room were employees of the Alabama High School Athletic Association. So the executive staff, of course, Alvin and his immediate staff, the Central Board of Control, Terry Curtis is obviously on that, more on him in just a moment. But Mike Welch is the president of that board, and then other employees, and then myself. And we started the meeting by me having to say who I am, and everyone around the room and said who they were, and then we prayed, and then that was the announcement. And it was not listed on the itinerary, or the agenda rather, to discuss, and so I was pretty surprised. I mean, he brought out an envelope and began reading from a prepared kind of statement or letter, I guess you can kind of say, to the Central Board that said that after 3 years as the executive director, and then even longer as the associate executive director under Steve Savarese, that he would officially retire in September. But certainly one of the biggest sports stories of the year, and one that came as a surprise to many.
Exactly. I think I've always considered the executive director position at the AHSAA almost like the Pittsburgh Steelers job, where very few people have held that chair. It's been more than 100 years, 104 years. And there's only been 5 executive directors. That's now counting Alvin Briggs, who's now outgoing effective September 2nd. Your thoughts right now on where the executive director, that position is right now, where it is going, and just the leadership of the AHSAA?
Yeah, so I asked Terry Curtis that on the record. I said, where are you going now? Where do we go when in terms of who do we turn to for leadership? And the first thing he said was, it's a tough job, and it is a tough job. It was a tough job for Alvin, it was a tough job for Steve Savarese, and the 3 guys before them. But the world is changing. College sports changing, high school sports changing, and it's changing every single day, and it's getting more and more challenging. And so the state of that position is that I don't want that job. I mean, I think it pays pretty well, but who wants the headache and the decision making that comes with that? Now, you have to understand that when you take over that position, there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of eyes. It is up to you to uphold the bylaws of the Alabama High School Athletic Association, and to keep integrity in high school athletics in our state. And Terry Curtis, when I spoke with him at this meeting, he said there's a lack of trust, there's a lack of unity, and that it is the goal of the Central Board to continue to put student athletes, their coaches, programs at the forefront, to uphold the bylaws, and as they move forward now in the search for a new executive director, to bring someone in who's going to be aligned with that same thought process.
Exactly. Just to clarify out there, these are 2 different positions. The Central Board president was an elected position. That is where UMS Wright head football coach Terry Curtis will serve, and now the board will look to approve another executive director to lead the AHSAA.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons that I went to Montgomery for the Central Board meeting to begin with, is because I knew that position, as well as the vice president position on the Central Board, again, this is kind of the checks and balances, so to speak. You have the executive director that Alvin will step down from or retire from in September. Terry Curtis will take over for Mike Welch. That's a 2-year term, or position rather, for Terry Curtis, who will now step into that role in July. Kim Keel, who is the Pelham principal, she was elected as the vice president. And so I knew that going into that meeting, that was one of the things that was on the agenda. They do it every other year, I should say, during this meeting here in spring. They meet 4 times a year outside of any emergency meetings or things like that. The decisions have to be made. But I knew there was a big election. I knew that Terry Curtis was kind of the shoe-in. He was he was the guy that has served on the board for quite some time, and so I had heard that he would be up for a nomination. And of course, you never know, will someone else be nominated? But this is what I'll say about the 15 or so people that were in that room, is that when he was nominated for a position as the president of the Central Board, nobody else nominated anybody else. In fact, the next thing that was said was, that they would motion to close nominations.
Right.
I mean, it was pretty much
right.
immediate.
Yeah.
And everyone, agreed and approved him unanimously to be the president. And so I think there is a confidence in what Terry can bring, not only as a Central Board member and his history there, but also as a coach. Of course, we do know he's the winningest coach in the state of Alabama history, but it is also unprecedented for an active football coach to be in this type of leadership role within the AHSAA. So we will see what that looks like moving forward.
Yeah, certainly a lot of questions to be answered. Going specifically back to the Alvin Briggs situation, I think a lot of people are wondering why and how. And to Mr. Briggs' credit, he brought flag football, which is now an exploding sport. He was instrumental to bring flag football to the state of Alabama. But you mentioned it earlier, and I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into this. This is a really tough job, especially in today's climate, being the leader of any sports governing body. We've seen a change in the NCAA, and we're now seeing a change with the AHSAA.
Yeah, and before we really break down our thoughts and opinions on this, the first thing I want to do is point to what I asked Terry Curtis about Alvin Briggs' retirement, something that, again, came to a shock to many. This is what Coach Curtis had to say.
Alvin's been a part of it as a coach, as administrator, came on with Steve, I think 11 or 12 years ago, been involved, knows everybody in the state, and it's a tough job, and I think some of the things that's been going on recently and all, just the time and not being able to sleep and those things just, got to him. I was a little bit shocked, but in knowing Alvin, I wasn't shocked because of a lot that's been going on throughout the state here the last year or so even. And some decisions he's had to make that's been tough. And, they wasn't going away. So, he served well. He did a good job with Steve. And it was just, he going to ride off in the sunset. But he's been a friend a long time, and he'll still be a friend.
So obviously, Coach Curtis alluding to the toughness of this job, how difficult it is to have to make these decisions. There's a lot of eyes on you. There's pressure involved in this. He mentioned lack of sleep. How it impacts your life personally and professionally. And this is, Alvin Briggs is a guy, a former Auburn football star. Someone who's in the public eye, who's well known, well liked. But I think that ultimately he was faced with a lot of difficult decisions.
For sure.
And you look around at some of the things and maybe the more high-profile stories, because here's the deal: there's actually several stories all throughout the state that if you're really paying attention, different sports, different bylaws, people wanting to see enforced and decisions going one way rather than another way. But locally, I think one of the biggest, without question, is the Gulf Shores football investigation. And there's no question that was a part of kind of how we got to this point in terms of the frustration with the Central Board, the lack of unification that Terry Curtis spoke of, the difficulty that comes with the executive director position, because Alvin had to make a decision to for the first time in the history of high school football, allow a team to enter the postseason while under an active investigation.
Exactly.
And our reporting, proudly so, brought a lot of that stuff to the forefront. And honestly, a lot of it didn't take a ton of digging, because a lot of it was public record.
That's exactly
and so, we did get a lot of source information, people within the AHSAA who wanted to see, rules upheld, bylaws upheld, and wanted to ultimately see Gulf Shores held responsible for things that were going on behind the scenes. That didn't happen, okay? And I can't sit here and speak to you why that didn't happen, why the decisions that were made or were not made happen. I don't know those answers. What I do know is that the amount of pressure that came on Alvin Briggs' shoulders due to Gulf Shores going and winning the state title in December, and then 4 months later, not knowing the result of that investigation still was a problem.
Exactly.
And it wasn't just a problem from a reporting standpoint, it was a problem from a Central Board standpoint, other membership schools, because at the end of the day, the AHSAA has one job, and that is to serve the membership, and that is not what he was upholding.
Exactly. 2 points of emphasis here. Number one, I want to congratulate you because your reporting was fantastic. And we not only know it here at WKRG, I think the public recognizes that, and the Alabama Broadcasters Association recognizes it as well, handing you a very well-deserved award.
Appreciate it.
Secondly, to that point, how much did this whole thing being played out in public do you think really led to what we got to this past week.
Again, this is not a pat on the back, it's unprecedented.
For sure.
It's never happened before.
Yes.
I mean, you hear rumors. If I had a laundry list of things, and so do you, Gerhard, you've been in this state long enough, and really
100%.
anyone who's worked in any state in high school athletics has heard the complaints. They've seen pictures. Oh, this person's leaving their house and they're going to school over here, and you know, they start living here. And I mean, you've seen it all, okay? But the reason we could do the Gulf Shores story in the way that we could was because there were public record that showed us that Jason Barnett and Gulf Coast Athletics paid monthly rent for Gulf Shores high school football student athletes, as well as other student athletes in other Dolphins athletic programs, period.
Exactly.
And that was proven to be true. As you mentioned, that was awarded by the Alvin Broadcast Association. They don't hand out those awards just because they're friendly, okay? I mean, you have to have a reporting that is truthful, and reporting that is accurate and thorough, and Lord knows it was thorough. But all of those things being said, I think it playing out in public was a game changer, because here's what people may or may not understand. The Central Board does not see the investigation at all. What happens is the investigators go into a school, they do interviews, they collect evidence, and they hand it over to the executive staff. They hand it over to Alvin Briggs and to Kim Vickers, who is the associate executive director, and they determine, along with the lawyer there for the AHSAA, Mark Bain, they determine what is going to be the ruling. Okay? Then the ruling is made. Now, if a school appeals, then we're talking about different situations, different people getting involved. But so the Central Board doesn't see the investigation, because what that would do is that would compromise their ability to be able to have that checks and balances and say, okay, hold on a minute. Because, of course, if they see information that's on the other side, and again, anyways, that's their process. All that to say that it's never played out in the public. And so I don't give one rat's behind if our information shows the Central Board what was in the investigation, because that's our work. That's our investigation. But we knew what was going to be in that. So it's not my responsibility to not allow the Central Board to see that. So how many times has the Central Board been able to see information like they did this time? For all I know, never before. I have no idea. But I can guarantee you, and I know this for a fact, that played a large role in pressure from the Central Board on the shoulders of Alvin Briggs. I'm not here to be a voice for anybody but WKRG and for journalistic integrity and for our responsibility to hold the powerful accountable, and that's what we did here. And I'm not sitting here praying for anyone's downfall, whether that's Gulf Shores, Alvin Briggs, the Central Board, the Alabama High School Athletic Association. No, in fact, I want nothing more than for student athletes along the Gulf Coast to thrive and to have success. And I mean, that's why I got into this business, because there was a day where I was a high school student athlete and I had a spotlight from the local media, and I was like, dang, I want to do that someday. That's what I want to do. And so, I mean, that's why we do 33 teams. And that's why we have, you know, the fifth quarter. That's why we pride ourselves on coverage for high school athletics. We don't have big-time SEC college football teams here in Mobile. We don't have professional football teams. We have high school athletics. And we pride ourselves in that. We're never hoping, I can speak for both of us, we're never hoping for someone 100%. To fail. And that was never the goal here. It's unfortunate because the student athletes are the ones that suffer. And folks are saying, oh, well, this could compromise Gulf Shores' state title run, or this could kick them out of the playoffs, and they had such a fantastic season, they worked so hard. So has every other team they're playing. Okay, and some are following the rules and some are not following the rules. And again, that's for the AHSAA to uphold those bylaws, but it's our responsibility to uncover the truth and to shed light in dark areas.
Great stuff. Still way more to come on this issue, specifically where the AHSAA will go next as it looks for its new leader. That and so much more ahead on Sports Overtime. Welcome back to Sports Overtime. Simone Eli, Gerhard Mathangani joining you on the biggest topic of the week, a new executive director coming to the Alabama High School Athletic Association. I think one of the hardest positions right now in any form of leadership, and I'm talking about from government on down, is right now trying to control and police athletics. It is a cash cow. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry when you add all three levels, from the high school level to the professional levels. And especially in the high school and the collegiate levels right now, with so much changing from 2019 to where we stand now, it's almost unrecognizable what people in that position have to do. I think this is going to be one of the hardest jobs to try to police and try to maintain over the course of the next 10, 15 years until people get some reins on this. As far as what you think the AHSAA will do, what characteristics, maybe not people, but what characteristics will be what they're looking for that person to take that office coming in 2025?
If I'm in that office, if I'm on the central board and I'm sitting there, anybody with a significant tie to the state of Alabama, anybody who's been a coach in the state of Alabama is out.
Yeah. Right.
Immediately. Because here's the deal. We need a leader in this state who's going to come in and every single coach, every single classification, program, student athlete, area of the state, demographic, you name it, is faceless.
Yes.
It doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter where you coach. Doesn't matter where you live. They are going to hold everyone responsible to follow the rules. And you have to remember, there are a lot more different types of rules that are going to come with name, image, and likeness trickling down to high school athletics.
Exactly.
It's coming.
Right.
And Terry Curtis alluded to that when I spoke to him in Montgomery as well. The transfer issues. I mean, we say transfer portal as a joke, but Lord have mercy, it is here. It has turned into that. We were previewing high school football in the spring, and then by fall, kids are at different high schools, and we're talking about a 2-month difference. And there are rules that are in place to keep that from happening or to at least do it correctly. Name, image, and likeness is going to throw in a wrench into high school athletics that is going to be unprecedented, one that I'm not even sure we could ever, there's nothing that could even amount to compare to what type of impact that's going to have. Similar to how it had on college athletics a few years ago when that ball started rolling, and now it's so out of hand. And it's a saying that I like to say often is you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. You can't, how are you going to take millions away from kids? Okay, they got so out of hand, there was absolutely zero legislation and there was zero control that you're seeing these collectives. You're seeing NIL, as Nick Saban says, and I mean, I'm not saying he's right about everything, but this I wholeheartedly agree with, is this was never the intent of why NIL was going to become a thing. And it wasn't to say, hey, everyone on our offensive line is going to get a truck, or $50,000, or to use it as a recruiting tool, and that's what it's become. How are we going to keep that from completely taking over high school athletics in the state of Alabama? So when you bring in somebody, one, hopefully they have a little bit of experience. I'm talking about looking for a commissioner of maybe a D2 league somewhere. That would be an unbelievable hire. Somebody, again, that doesn't have a personal connection to someone that is a head coach over here or over there. And you just don't want to see that, because then we're looking at it gets too messy. And we've seen a lot of messiness. And man, if we could talk about all the rumor mill stuff that we hear on a regular basis, Gerhard, we could fill a lot more time than what we're filling now.
100%. Simone, great job reporting. We look forward to continue reporting as Alabama High School Athletic Association looks for its new leader.